Me and my brother would carry this chip on our shoulder about, like we see dudes in public, shaved head. Oh, you skinhead? They say yes, and we could jump on them. Like that was just our thing. I think we also caused a lot of grief of people hating us because we went after skinheads specifically. And I never wanted to feel like that again. So anytime somebody threatened our family or made it feel like they were threatening my family, then I would go above and beyond to hurt somebody. So I said, let's follow them. Where are they at? They should know better. And we followed them for about 20 miles on the freeway. It was from Hollywood nightclub. We ended up following them all the way to Commerce, and that's where I shot and killed Mr. Minh Nguyen and hit 3 other people in the car.
Man, so the commissioner finds you suitable for parole. So what happens there?
And I was standing on a prison yard one day, and I was like, man, like fresh readings on mindfulness and things like that. And then I go, why do I have to view prison as punishment? Why can't I look at this as a place where I can remake myself, even if I'm supposed to die in here?
Yo, welcome back to Reentry Network Podcast. It's your boy Yak.
It's your boy T.
We got a special one today, man. I want to give a really big shout out to everybody that's been commenting and liking our videos. Thank you guys so much for subscribing and providing all the support. But we have another great one for you guys today. I want to give a shout out to Change Your Action, especially Daphne for connecting us with this individual. When you look this person's name up on Google, I promise you all his successes has come up, and you would not guess just by looking at him on his background. He has such a great story, and it's so powerful because I know there's people out there that could benefit from this on so many levels. So I want to give a really warm welcome to our boy, Quan Huyn. Let's go, man.
Let's get it.
I'm so sorry.
So tell us, that was a little off, but what's the pronunciation?
Quan Huyn.
Quan Huyn. Okay. I apologize for that. It was a little tongue twister, but no, I think, I mean, if you're comfortable, would you like to move forward like that?
I'm fine.
We're
This is your guys' podcast,
we make it,
Okay.
we're at ease.
So Daphne, it was funny because I was talking to Daphne about the podcast, what we do, and we're like, we love to get, stories of people who've been formerly incarcerated. She's like, I have the perfect person for you. I'm like, who is that? She's like, this guy, Quan. I'm like, no way. What's this about? Well, have you heard of Defy Ventures? And she started talking to me about all the stuff you do, which we'll get to pretty soon. But I was like, no way. So when I hit you up, man, you were so welcoming. I appreciate that. I think it's really tough when we reach out to individuals because a lot of individuals don't want to share their story, or they're scared to, or they're not motivated to. And hopefully you sharing yours today will motivate others, right? For the better. So to get really into it, we want to talk a little bit about your background because overall, you were incarcerated for how many years?
I've done a total of 22 years.
22 years. So we want to talk about how, what kind of led to that. So where did you grow up a little bit, and then how that kind of led to your incarceration?
Sure. I grew up in Provo, Utah. First generation Vietnamese refugee. After the war, we lost our country. My father decided to settle in Provo, Utah because my mother had never seen snow. So that was his reason for deciding to go there. So I was the firstborn. My brother and sister were born over there. Utah is a beautiful state, but I did experience what I do now know to be racism growing up. So that was a lot of the backdrop for my issues later with acceptance and fitting in. One instance in particular was my younger brother and I, we were playing with our G.I. Joes in the streams, and some older kids and what looked like adults told us, like, get out of our country, get out of here, and start throwing rocks at us. And, we're little kids, and we're thinking, like, oh, the fence is so high, they're not going to get to us, so come and make us. And they jumped the fence, they started chasing us, and my brother and I ran. I dropped some of my G.I. Joes. My little brother stopped to face them, and they punched him, and they started shoving dirt in his mouth, and I stood there like I didn't jump in. I was too scared. And then me and my brother went home. He was crying. I was crying. When my father found out what happened, he's like, how could you let this happen to your family? And how did you let this happen? You're supposed to protect your family. So I think that also instilled in me this thinking because I know later on in life, like anytime something bothered me or my brother, or somebody threatened me or my brother, we would actually like go pretty crazy around it, like go above and beyond. And I think that's where a lot of it was just already not my father's fault, of course, but you know, in him saying that and then never bringing it up again to me, it just felt like, damn, I've let my family down. I've let my father down, and I never wanted to feel like that again. So anytime somebody threatened our family or made it feel like they were threatening my family, then I would go above and beyond to hurt somebody. Yeah.
Real quick, I just want to say it's pretty trippy how, like in retrospect, you can think back and it's super clear how some of the beginning pieces of these things happened or started taking place, you know?
Yeah.
And to backtrack it to a memory that young where you're like, I can't let that happen to my little brother again. And then once we hear the story that's later to come, it's like, damn, some of these things were precursors, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You were how old at this point when that was
8.
Wow, you were
That's
8.
young. That's a baby.
I was 8.
Yeah.
So I
8,
guess
9 years old, yeah.
did that conversation ever take place, especially with like your father, like knowing that, you know, this may happen, racism may happen, or things like that?
Well,
Did that ever take place?
I mean, a funny story. This is like the 80s. They have all these kung fu movies, right? On TV, right? Remember all the kung fu movies?
Yeah.
And you know how they dub in the
Boys.
people's like they're speaking and then they dub it in.
Oh, right,
So I remember
yeah.
watching and I see their mouths moving weird. And I was like, why do they look? And then I remember, I wonder if that's what I look like when I speak English. Is that why kids tease us at school?
Right.
So I remember getting in front of the mirror and saying, hello, how are you? And seeing my mouth move weird. I just remember that. And I remember bringing it up with my dad. And he of course, he laughed in his gentle way. And like, no, they dub in the voices. And I'm like, but why did the kids at school tease me? Because we were the only Asians at school. I mean, everybody is like 99% white. So like, I remember growing up thinking, I wish I just looked normal. I wish my family looked normal. Why don't we look normal? And so there was all of this going on for me as a little kid back then, like these weird questions, like only my dad could answer it. So my father gets diagnosed with leukemia around that time, and his condition got worse. So that's when we moved out here to California because his family's out here. So out here in California, for me, from growing up in Utah, Provo, Utah, coming out here, suddenly it's as diverse as I've never seen, like Hispanic kids, other Asians, blacks, and everything. So for me, it just like it was a totally different world. But then even at school, first in California, going to school with other Vietnamese kids, I was teased for not being able to speak Vietnamese well.
Oh, really? That's a thing. I didn't know.
Yeah.
So that exists in a Hispanic community, and you know that there's just
Yeah, they said I was whitewashed.
I didn't know that was a thing too.
Yeah.
Okay.
They said, "Oh, you're whitewashed and you can't even speak Vietnamese." And so for me, it felt like crap. I don't fit anywhere I go. Like my own folks. So for me, I remember just thinking, damn, there's something wrong with me.
Wow.
Just growing up thinking like that. Yeah.
So now, was mom's in the pictures too? Like, was mom, and what was that relationship like with you and your family as well?
My mom's, I mean, my mom's an interesting woman. Like, and I highlighted her in my book because she can't express her feelings. Like she seems very cold. She's an amazing cook, and that's when I know that's how she expresses her love, through her cooking.
Right.
She won't tell me she loves me. She even to this day she still has that same issue, but I know she does. But yeah, so I think
you go
growing
get a
up,
nice big warm meal. That's how you.
yes,
know,
but
right.
like, does your mom tuck you in bed and tell you she loves you? No, for her it's like, why are your grades not good? You have to do this. You have to become this, and it was more just expectations. So, but then that was the relationship with my mom. Then my father's condition gets worse. He passes away when I'm 13. So my mom, by that time, had to go to work full time to take care of 3 kids. So she was never around. And I think at that time, I remember when he passed away, because my father died on the day of our first communion.
Oh man,
So,
That's wild.
yeah, I remember thinking up until that, like as a little kid, I remember we're going to go. My mom used to say, your dad's going to die. And I think in the back of my mind, the back of my brother and sister's mind, like, oh, our communion's coming up. Our first prayer after we eat the bread, we're going to pray for our dad to live. Like, I hear my brother talking about it now. I hear my sister. But back then, I don't think any of us were able to process it. And I remember that day, morning, waking up, and my little sister telling me, yeah, dad passed away last night. And for me, I was like, what happened? Like, God killed our dad just so he wouldn't have to answer our prayers. And I think, like I see now, you know how they say like families that experience death, there's counseling, there's treatment and stuff like that. And we didn't get none of that. There was no way to talk about it. It was like, oh, your dad's dead, and now it's something that we just don't talk about.
Would you say that the reason why you didn't get a chance to do it was because it's like culture that you don't do that, or is it because you didn't have access to that?
I would say both. I mean, culture for sure, but then also, I mean, we were on welfare. Like we didn't have there was no talk about, okay, you've experienced the death of a loved one. This is the healthy thing to do. I remember like my dad's friends and his uncles that were at the funeral telling me, "Oh, you're such a strong kid," because I wasn't crying, or whatever it is. I believe, okay, well that means if I cry, that means I'm weak. So I can't be weak. So I can't show these feelings, and I don't talk about it. And I think like I did not begin to grieve my father's death until like 25 years after, when I was doing a life sentence in prison.
Wow.
That's when I actually went to talk to a doctor for the first time and talk about, damn, these are the things that affected me. This is how it shaped the way I saw the world. Now I know why I focused a lot into the gangs and why I did this and then it started. Once I've understood that component, then I was able to unravel a bunch of other things about my own life and build on it.
That's empowering. I think one important thing that I kind of want to touch on that you probably learned when you got incarcerated, but grief and loss is something that just doesn't happen right then and there. It's a process.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Sure.
It could happen years from there. It could happen like 10 years from now, a decade. You don't know. So eventually, it got to you when you were incarcerated because you had the chance to speak about it. Now, you were how old when that happened with your father?
13.
13, at a young age. Now.
And then, real quick question: what part of California did you land in?
Orange County.
Orange County.
Oh, okay.
Okay, gotcha.
So it was a big Vietnamese community out there. There was and then I grew up during the 80s and 90s during that time when it's a big community, and I think we were still as a
13, dad passes away. You're getting ready for your first communion. What kind of state of mind does that leave you in as a 13-year-old in a new place? Now you're figuring out there's different groups, there's things going on, but you're going through household trauma. Where do you find yourself at that point in time?
Lost. I would just say lost. Like the whole family was. I look like even when I flashback now, just think about my mom, my sister, my brother. I think we were just all lost. We didn't know what to do. We just went through the motions. Go to mass every week, pray, just be sad, don't know how to express it. Just go to school, try to get good grades from mom, but then can't talk about my father's death.
So at all, not even like I miss dad type of deal. That wasn't a thing.
No, that wasn't a thing in our household. We didn't talk about it.
That's really
yeah,
interesting.
and it's bizarre, but I could see how bizarre it was and how unhealthy it was. But yeah, we did not talk about it. Like maybe like there might be like, oh, my mom might mention, oh, your dad used to like eating this dish or something. But there's not really like, hey kids, how are you doing? Let's process this. None of that. Most definitely.
So now your mother really takes lead on the household component. How does that feel for you now that your mother's out of the house? You're the oldest out of all?
I'm the oldest.
So now do you feel like you've taken this role to take care of your siblings?
In a way, I think there was I felt like there's this expectation that, hey, now you have to be the one to be successful, to take care of my mom. I have to take care of my mom eventually when she gets older. When I have to hurry up and grow up to take care of the family, and yeah, that is how I felt.
How were you trying to grow up at that time? Like, what were the steps that you were taking, or were you not taking any steps?
As far as
to grow up and be able to support one way or another.
Fill those shoes type of deal.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, our family was on welfare. I think that's where, by that age, my brother and I already knew how to hustle. Like we already, like, I remember before I even knew how to drive a car, I already knew how to break into a car and steal the radios. Like, it was one of my friends that was like the things like that they like to do. Like his older brothers would take us, and then we would break into the cars, take radios. So I would have a whole bunch of radios under my bed. I remember my mom comes home like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm fixing these radios." And she's like, "Oh, you're so smart." But it was like, no, this is how we just hustle. We hustle. That's where we, yeah. So I remember just a bunch of little things like that. And of course, it gets more and more criminally sophisticated. But yeah, I mean, that's where the beginnings was already as like, okay, I'm on the streets and this is what I do to so that we could wear Nikes to school instead of having my mom buy shoes at Payless. No way. We're going to get shoes of the week.
School,
Yeah.
Right. How did you get exposed to that kind of, because now you transitioned from OC. When did you start getting exposed to like the car breakings and things like that?
I think it was just in junior high. One of my best friends at the time, his older brother were already kind of in doing things like this, and then these are guys that I looked up to as a little kid. You know, they have cars, and then later on, when we're good at breaking into these cars, then they're like, oh yeah, you're good. They're really good at this. So then we get some recognition, and these are older guys that are telling me I'm cool, and I feel like I'm cool. So I think all of that, and then, you know, of course, in a car, and then you break into a car, you get the radio. If you find a wallet, there's credit cards. So they show us how to start scamming on credit cards, writing fake checks and things like that, and it just continues
Were
to
these
evolve.
older guys that you mentioned part of a hood? Was this part of like a hood activity, or was mischief still?
More mischievous,
Mischievous
yeah. It's
type?
like, because
Okay.
it's like, this is all first generation Vietnamese. You know, but of course, you know, like now understanding the mass incarceration policies of the 80s and 90s and what that did to our communities at the time, when they would,
Tough on crime.
yeah,
buddy.
like they say tough on crime, they come in with their vehicles and lay us down and say that we're gang members, and we weren't yet, but they were pushing that stuff, and suddenly we didn't feel like we were part of a community. So what does that do? So then they're like, okay, you guys are part of this group. Oh, are you this gang? And we're like, no, we're not gangs.
Right.
But they were like, no, you guys are gang members, and they'll fill the identification cards and like, oh, you're with this group or whatever, and start labeling us as gang members. I think a lot of us felt like, oh, well, if they're gonna label us, then we might as well, yeah.
now.
Dang,
Yeah,
that's
that's-
an interesting
I'm glad you
perspective.
touched on it. We
Yeah.
had a couple individuals speak on that. Like, I was incarcerated in the 90s and the 80s. Like, you got to understand, my group wasn't a gang when we got incarcerated.
Yeah.
We were a group of friends, and
Yeah.
then the other stuff came about.
Yeah.
You know, so that's interesting to know that, or take it into account at least. You know, when we're going through these things, thinking about that. That stuff start escalating to eventually give you the bigger sentence. Was that just like a one-off thing that gave you the bigger sentence?
No, those things escalate. I mean, my first arrest was at 17. There were some skinheads at our school that had called and threatened my mom, and they said they were going to kill her. And my brother found out who it was, so they came to my work. I was working at Subway at the time, and they let me know, like, hey, those dudes called the house. They threatened mom. So then he goes, do you know where they live? And
That really happened real quick? They really called your mom?
Yeah.
The kids? The
Yeah.
random?
How did
Yeah.
they get access
That's
to
what
something
I'm-
that's
like
the
that?
Okay.
we didn't know how they got
Gotcha.
our phone number.
That
Like
is
someone
really-
gave them our house
Yeah.
number. My mom picks up the phone, and they're like,
Scary.
"Gooks, we're gonna come kill you, kill your whole family." My mom's scared, so she hands my brother. Somebody says they're coming to kill us. My brother's like, "Hello, hello," and they were talking crap to my brother. So my brother heard, he's like, "Oh, I know who that is." So then he came to my work and he asked, like, "Hey, do you know where so and so lives?" And I said, "I don't." But we asked my coworker. She's like, "Yeah, I know where they live." So she drew us a map.
Wow.
And she's like, "Oh yeah, they live here." And she's like, "These are the roads." So then they're like, "Oh, okay." They took the, and I think about 3-4 months before that, one of my homies, we got a hold of a gun. So he sported everywhere, and then so everything after or that came out of our mouths after that, "Oh yeah, we got a gun, so we're just gonna go shoot him up." So I remember we had gone to this house party, and he, like, the other guys who were surrounding us, a whole bunch of skinheads surrounded us. He pulls the gun out and they all run. So like suddenly we feel this power, like, okay,
Right.
we have gun, we're a group, we have a gun, and this is how we're cool now on the streets, and people talked about it. So that day at Subway, they told me, okay, we'll be back at 10 o'clock to pick you up, and we'll go to this house.
Your brothers?
Yes, my younger brother and my friend said, we'll come back at 10 o'clock to pick you up, and then we'll shoot up the house. We're like, okay. So that was our talking.
Real quick, not even like thinking too deep on it, right? You were just thinking, we're gonna a repeat of what happened last time. I'll probably pull it out. They run away, the empowerment from it. You
Yes.
probably didn't dwell on it, right?
I didn't, never in a million, we never shot that gun before, nothing like that. 10 o'clock comes around, my brother and them did not come to my house. So I went home. I mean, they didn't pick me up. I went home, and my brother's laying in bed, and he looked like terrified. I said, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, we left. We went to the arcade, and they ran into some other guy that knew where those guys lived, where one of the skinheads lived. So he took them over to the house. Then my homie decides to go out, knocks on the door. They open the door. He ran inside and shoots 3 people.
Wow.
So he shot
That
3
is
people.
insane.
All 3 of them survived. within 2 weeks, then they arrested all of us, including me, for conspiracy. They said because I asked my coworker for the map. But, I mean, as an aside, but yet the person that drew the map was not arrested. She was never charged because she's white, So it was like all of that tied into it. It was like, wait, how did I get charged? And I never in a million years thought that was going to happen. Yeah. So they got me under conspiracy. So.
And for people that don't know, conspiracy is kind of like used as kind of like a smokescreen to give you life. So instead of fighting, I think it's called double jeopardy or something like that, it's their reason to be able to give everyone a different version of a life sentence on the same case, right?
Yes, and if you want to track it even further, that's also under the mass incarceration policies on the war on drugs is where they came up with the conspiracy. So that's where they first used it, and then it later on became a blanket term for all police departments to use conspiracy charges under basically anything to wrap people up. Yeah,
insane. And then growing up in Orange County, was the interactions between other races and skinheads, was that a thing? Because that's, I would say, unheard of for even my generation out here in LA. Maybe for yourself, B, what do you think?
No, it's really, I was curious because I know
skinheads and stuff like that. That didn't really.
It's diverse. It's diverse, and I know like even Santa Ana, for instance, it's a well-known location in OC too. So what was that experience like?
So that was normal, huh?
Right, like being out there, like for you, and running around.
Well, I mean, I already had this hatred against, like racism or whites that oppress from Utah. And then, so of course, anything like skinhead. So I think because of that, me and my brother, we carry this chip on our shoulder about, like we see dudes in public, shaved head. Oh, you a skinhead? They say yes, and we could jump on them. Like that was just our thing. Like I think we also caused a lot of grief of people hating us because we went after skinheads specifically for a lot of
I get you. You're saying like at a certain point you internalized it, and so now you are being that person that they're talking crap about. So now I'm gonna show you like, okay, since you're already gonna, throw things out there or whatever. Man, that's intense. So you get picked up for conspiracy because a friend did something. And I'm sure you probably have, or prison. It makes you think of the fault. Like, yes, I had some fault in it. Even if you weren't there, you didn't do it. They were still your group of friends and you knew what was going on or whatever, right? Not saying that's the case. How does that even take place? The going into were you a juvenile still at this point? So
as juvenile, they charged me as an adult. Yeah, I was at Orange County Juvenile Hall. They charged me as an adult. Ended up getting 7 years in the California Youth Authority. So I went to YA from there. Yeah. So of course at the time YA was like, oh, if you went to YA, then you went to gladiator school.
Right.
You must be really cool, and you must be and I think that's how we thought, like going to the YA. So I mean that's where my gang ties like got really deep into. It's like it was in the jail, and I get indoctrinated by the older guys. Like like hey, this is our race. That's the Hispanics over there. Those are the paisas. Those are the whites, and those are the blacks, and these are the Asians. So this is how we have to organize ourselves in here. So I mean, that's where I really felt like, oh, okay, now I know where I belong. This is my group of people. Now I finally fit in for once. They're not teasing me because I can't speak Vietnamese or whatever. These guys take me under their wing, and so that's where a lot of it. And then of course going into YA, and then there's a bunch of other young gang members and young mischievous kids, and we just start forming our groups, which later on that's the core of our gang later.
That's nuts.
Right.
So you end up going to YA, and that end up, again, that's why I'm glad that they did away with the YAs, because it would end up grooming you for prison, to become literally like a crash dummy for prison, really, right? That's what YA did.
Yep.
I just so you caught the 7, and how does that happen? You going in, I'm assuming you're a lot smaller. You're going in and there's a bunch of grown men. This is YA. How was that first experience for you, and what did moms think about you being incarcerated for something like that?
Oh, my mom was like totally shocked. I think like heartbroken. She didn't know what to do because suddenly her 2 sons are in prison.
Both of you.
Yes.
That makes sense. And he's younger, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so he ended up doing 5 of the 7. I did 2.5. I got out, but then getting out from there after 2.5 in the YA, and then I'm out there running on the streets now. Now the guys that were locked up with me in the YA or in the county jail or at juvenile hall, hey, I think that's the only place where I felt like I can have guys that can understand my journey. I didn't feel comfortable around others, but yet there was a part of me like, okay, I still have to make my mom proud. Let me enroll in college. Let me get a job. So it was like a double life, wanting to try to, still, I guess, basically trying to find my way.
How was that with knowing that your brother was still incarcerated? Like, did you feel a certain way with that part as well?
Yeah, I felt guilty. Like, damn, I wish my brother was here. It's funny because when him and I have the conversations, I think he felt guilty because I got arrested. But for me, I felt guilty that he got arrested. Like, damn, my own little brother, and I couldn't even protect him. So I think I think both of us were affected by it.
And it's a strong relationship. I think the brother love is a strong relationship, and you can speak on that behalf too. Like the whole incarcerated component of like having a brother incarcerated while you're out, you always want to look out for the best. And I'm sure like even now, you're at the moment right now, is your brother incarcerated? Is he free now?
No, he did 5 years, got out. He's doing great. He's a business owner, has his own restaurant. Yeah, he's doing great. He was in real estate. I think during the boom of the 2000s, I think he made his.
Boom for some, huh?
Right.
But then it crashed.
Were made.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then
Around
it crashed
that
in
time, yeah.
08. But I think before that, like the early 2000s, I think he made, like at the time, he's like, oh yeah, I made my first meal before I was 30. And then, of course, everything crashes later. So, yeah.
And like, I'm sure no one would ever know went to YA. Like,
Yeah.
It's crazy. Youth authority.
So so now you were released. You were released.
I'm surprised by that. I didn't even know, like, YA, most people would learn their lesson, or whatever.
Right.
And so I'm just tripped out by that. Like, it kept going, huh?
Yeah, I kept going.
It hardens you, really.
Yeah. I mean, it basically, YA groomed me to be running on the streets as a knucklehead. Like, suddenly, okay, now I got real street cred. And guys like from juvenile hall and county, oh, this guy went to the YA, yeah. And then, of course, there's a part of me that I feel now I have to continue to perpetuate it. Like, so that's where, like, after getting out of YA, that's where basically friends that I met over the years, we formed the core part of our gang. Like, people are like, oh, it's that group, it's this gang. And we're like, nah, we're not really a gang. But then later on, we're like, okay, you know what? We have guns, we know what to do, and it just continues to evolve. And next thing you know, like, okay, our group has beef with another group over something stupid, or I don't even know what, but they shot at us. Okay, now what do we have to do? Now we have to shoot at them because there's a name, and our name recognition is behind this now. So then it just spun out of control, where throughout the early 90s, I was involved in quite a bit of different shootings here and there. Yeah. That was in Orange County. Yeah, it was a war zone at the time.
One thing I'm thinking too right now is you and your brother went at the same time. Now it's your mom trying to take care of not only herself but also your little sister.
Yes,
as well.
yes.
So how did that feel with you and your little sister's relationship, and how did it affect her?
I don't think I ever thought about it like that until I got my life sentence, and then I started thinking, damn, how did I not take care of my little sister? Because the whole time, like, oh, my job is to take care of my family, and I definitely didn't take care of my family. Like, I caused up, but I didn't think of it at the time. All I thought of was like, I just want to live this way. The world screwed me over. Poor me. I'm a victim. I'm a victim of the American justice system. Of this racist system, and telling myself all this stuff that fed this narratives of why I'm not doing good in life, why I was unhappy, and
it's always easier to go that route.
yes,
right?
yes, and that was me. I looked at myself as like, oh, I'm a revolutionary, and I remember telling my mom at YA one of the times when I had violated for some guns, and she came in to visit me, and was like, oh, you should just pray. And I was like, why do you continue to talk about praying to this white God, blah? And I was just so angry and blaming her. And I was like, I wish I was born 20 years earlier. I would have joined the Viet Cong, become a revolutionary. And those people aren't traitors. Those are liberators of our country. And like all this crazy madness. But that's stuff I believed in the time. It's just because it fed my narrative of fuck this system. And this is how I got screwed. Instead of owning my part in anything, it was like easier to blame the world.
It's so intense that you build such a passion for something just because they gave you attention and love.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing else other than the fact that you got that attention and love, and that's where you build passion based off. And that's all what a lot of people are just looking for at home.
Man.
That's all they're looking for, just passionate love and just approval, like thank you, or like, you know, that's why I always say words of affirmation go such a long way too.
Yeah.
I always try to emphasize that. So if anyone does anything great, like great job, man, I'm happy you're here, etc. Even for those that we work with now. After you got off Hatch YA, how long did it take for you to get in car? Because you did Walmart's little sentence, and then you went to your life sentence, or
I got arrested. I got like violated like 2 times, 3 times.
So you're like 21 at the time, fresh out of YA. You got some size on you. You're out there running around.
No size.
No. So when I got arrested, 106 pounds, skinny all the
No
way up.
way.
Yes, I was on.
Built now. So
I was
Right.
I was on a wrestling team in high school, and I remember I was trying to get down to 103 that year. So I remember they weighed me in 106, and when I came out, they said, "Oh, you got big." I was like 130, still like small.
Still
Yeah,
small. Even
Yeah.
though it's a lot bigger than you
Yeah.
were at 106, it's still small. So you off rip, you took it as in like, now I met a bunch of dudes in YA. Now I have a network, right? Or a stronger network at that. Instead of going the other route, like, fuck this. Who wants to be smelling another man's shit, you know, all day?
yeah.
Which happens. Happens to me. Happens to a lot of people. You know that you would think it just stops there, but so it kept going, huh?
Yeah. I know because then it's like, okay, my homie on the street got killed, and it's this group, and then our group has to retaliate, and it's like, so you get out, and suddenly my car gets shot up, and my brother is in the car with me, and luckily he didn't get killed, and suddenly then we go get the car fixed. The next day, a different gang is waiting for us, and so like it was a really dark time in my life, like a bunch of different gangs going at it with each other, and like people knowing my car and knowing that I have a gun inside, so they always make sure that they're shooting at us first and trying to ambush. So it's like it was a really crazy time and like a dark time in my life.
Was your brother still part of it? The beginning years of you getting out? Or
Once
he
no,
already
like
kind
this is me like getting out, and then he's still incarcerated, and not me going in and out.
before.
And
Gotcha.
then he finally gets out, and he's pulled up into that madness with me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Man, and that's again, you guys are like
Yeah, so it's
living
like
this, like, man, I'm pulling him, he's pulling you, or
Yeah.
you find yourself in those situations,
yeah.
huh?
But of course, like he feels he has to protect me, and I have to protect him, and then so then I think I got violated in '96, and I had to do 2 years on that one for a gun violation, and they pulled us over with a whole bunch of guns and stuff like that. I got 2-year violation. Got out in '98, more angry than ever,
Really?
and then
Oh,
and then I also, but then I don't know where else my life is gonna go. So what else do? I still have to find a job because and I enrolled back in college, still trying to find my way. And I look back now, like, I was just still lost and confused. And so it was around that time was like 23, 24. And then I got, I was working at this company, the Gallup organization. Is the ones like they do the Gallup polls and stuff like
The
that.
canvassing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
They do a lot of surveys and things like that. So I was their interviewer of the year. I got a big award, and so they asked me to interview for a management position. So I remember thinking like, finally, my life is gonna go right for once. Like now, I get to be a manager over a site of 300 interviewers. This is what success looks like. And I remember the
Probably
interview.
on parole.
I was still on parole.
And so
I was still on Y parole.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I, what's it called? They did the interview, but it's not like a regular job interview. They do it like a personality based. Like, what do you think about when you drive home at night? When you hear this word, what color do you think? Or there's all this like all personality stuff. So they did the interview, and then about a month later, they come back and said, "Hey, Quan, we're sorry, but you're not a fit." So they use that exact word. You're not a fit, and I think that touched that part of me. Like, fuck, I don't fit in. I don't fit in. And
like, here we go again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember I didn't talk to my girlfriend about it at the time. I didn't tell moms. I just did what I did. Know best. I went down to the bar, got drunk. A couple weeks later, I was at the nightclub with some of my homies. I found out some of them got in a fight with a different group. I wasn't even involved in the fight, but I had a gun in my car. So I said, let's follow them. Where are they at? They should know better. And we followed them for about 20 miles on the freeway. It was from Hollywood nightclub. We ended up following them all the way to Commerce, and that's where I shot and killed Mr. Min Nguyen and hit 3 other people in the car. They were another group. So that's 98. That's when this happened. And I was
1998.
Yeah.
And what are the chances that you guys meet each other at the same bar, you happen to have a gun that day, and all that falls into place the way it does?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the gun was there intentionally because, like, I think I had all this emotion going on inside, and I know how, let's say, like, regular people can vent, they can talk. I knew, like, okay, whenever things were going on wrong in my life, what do? I can look for an excuse to fight with somebody or shoot at somebody to get out all this emotion and do it in a way that doesn't make me look like, like, okay, I could hide it behind, oh, it's a gang thing and somebody's disrespecting us. But that was like that crazy narrative I told myself. So
I get it. You're just masking it under something else, but
Yeah.
it's really some internal things
Yeah.
going on that are...
that's exactly what it
Yeah.
was. Just a bunch of internal, but I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
I was just like, oh, these guys disrespected us. I know what to do. And I just had this urge. I have to do it. It wasn't anybody told me to do it. I wasn't even involved in the fight. But yeah, I just felt like this is how I may have failed in this part of my life, but in this part of my life, this is where I can be accepted. I can get some, gain some achievements. And yeah, that's just how I believed in it.
Did you get picked up right after, like that same night, or if you?
No, I think I was picked up about 5-6 months after. I knew they were investigating us. Wow. They did a raid on. They raided one of the homegirls' houses a few days after, I think, and they said, "Oh, this happened up in Hollywood or in L.A. Who were the guys that you were with?" And so that's when I knew they were onto us. So I remember I coached her what to say, what not to say. I got rid of evidence, broke apart my gun, started coaching a bunch of different witnesses, and then they finally came and raided us, I think about 5-6 months after. Charged me for the death penalty.
5-6 months after normally means, though, that you have some type of action?
Because they just
time
didn't know. I think they were investigating who did the shooting. They didn't know who it was.
Got you.
And I think in the process of the investigation, that's how they started to find out. And then so they raided me. I was charged with first degree murder with special circumstances. That was 98, and then went to trial around 99, 2000. Was found guilty of second degree murder, which at the time for me or for everybody in the state of California, it's the same thing as a death sentence, because life sentence, 15 to life, 100 years to life, they were not paroling.
Yeah.
They had not paroled anybody since 1977. So when I went in, I was like, okay, I'm going to die in here, so I'm just going to live the way I want to live. And that's just how I did approach prison life for years at first.
So I'm assuming,
intense.
so you
That's
came in
intense.
without any thought of like, damn, I messed up or anything like that. I'm like, oh, there you go. Like,
Yeah.
let's just do it. Let's just go with the flow now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's. I would have to say I went into prison. There was not an ounce of remorse in me at the time. I was like, I told myself in my head, "Oh, it's my life or theirs," and which is a bullshit story because like I wasn't involved in the fight. They didn't see me coming up on their left side, and we just unloaded on them. So, but that's just how I justified it in my mind for many years.
What was that experience like? Now, where do you go? What's the first place you go through?
Pelican Bay. They sent me to Pelican Bay, which so at the time they were like. That's where they sent all the high profile gang members, and I remember hitting the yard thinking, well, if this is where they send the most high profile gang members and the toughest dudes in the state of California, then I have to hit this yard and show why I belong here on this yard too. And I think that's all of us on that yard just had that mindset.
Do you think you handled it, and it sucks, you handled it so well because of YA? You shouldn't handle that situation well, but whatever. You were seasoned.
Yeah.
At the time, so
yeah, I would have to say
what I
YA
mean?
seasoned me to think like a thug and a criminal, and yeah.
Because I'm sure if you went up there with another kid that lifer freshly sentenced, he's probably shaking, trying to figure out how this is gonna work.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure I was shaking inside too, but I definitely. So if anything, it seasoned me to hide it better. But I was definitely shaking up in there, and I imagine all the guys up in there. That's just how we felt. Yeah.
And especially at that time, you hear Pelican Bay, you're like, I'm going to hell, basically.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
So, that's intense. First sentence, you get sentenced and you land in probably the furthest place and the worst place possible,
Right.
Pelican Bay. You land on a 4-yard. It's still 4-yard type deal.
Yeah.
Um,
180. It was a 184
Okay.
yard at the
And
time.
at that time, they probably just had that and a support yard.
Yeah.
That was it, like a 1 or something.
Mm-hmm.
What were those first? Was it few years at that time?
I ended up, my points dropped to level 3 about a year and a half after. So what happened
Pretty
is,
soon. Okay.
so funny story of how I got sent to Pelican Bay. There was a counselor that at Delano, was it? I think that's when my reception was Delano. She was checking off all these things, and to add points, right? Like say if you have a high school diploma, it says no. And she did all these things because I only had 15 to life, but she pushed my things up to like 50. I think it was 58 or so, I can't remember exactly what it was, and I was like, wait, why did you say I don't have a high school diploma? I went to college. And she's like, I don't see it in the probation report. Like she kept on citing the probation report. And I go, wait, the probation, and she's like, and she told me to sign this paperwork to say that I'm a gang member. And I'm like, no, I'm not signing that. And she's like, well, probation report says that they suspect you. I go, I went to trial. I was found not guilty of gang crimes. I go, your probation report here says that I was arrested in college. Right there, why are you not giving me the points for being? And she wouldn't budge. And I was so pissed. I was like, do they even? I go, can I ask you a question? Do you even need to get a high school diploma to get this job? Because obviously you don't know. And she was like, okay, we're done here. And then so that's why I think like she's like, okay, shoot this guy to the.
I'll
shoot
play
this-
with you.
yeah.
I'll send you to the worst place possible. Don't worry.
So then I go up there, and because my name is foreign, and they didn't have any type of schooling or record of me having a high school diploma or going to college, they enrolled me in ABE1 ESL, whatever. That's why they put.
Oh, the ESL stuff.
They enrolled me.
That you don't even know Vietnamese. Like they're just assuming.
Yeah. Just because my name.
Okay.
So, but because they did that work assignment said I began work already right when I hit Pelican Bay. Whereas if I had a high school diploma, I have to go on a waiting list. If you don't get no work or school assignment, you don't get any extra points. So the whole place was slammed down. But because I was there for 18 months with a work assignment, they were able to drop my points. So then that's how I got to level 3. So I went to Donovan from there. I think 02. I went down to Donovan.
Gotcha. So fresh, you stayed a year and a half in. You already moved your first prison a year and a half in. Donovan was a level 4 at that
Level
time?
3. It was level 3.
Level 3.
And then in 06 is when I went to Soledad. Also level 3. I was supposed to go level 2 at Soledad, but they overrode me to the level 3 yard, the north yard there.
Okay.
Stayed there for a couple years, and then I went to Solano. And that's where I paroled from. So I got to Solano in 08.
Did you ever go to St. Quentin?
No.
No? But you did the TED Talk for the St. Quentin TED Talk, right?
Yeah, I did a TEDx San Quentin TED Talk. That was technically, when they first were talking about doing it, we were supposed to do it inside San Quentin, but there was just so many...
Is this with the ear hustle guys?
Yeah, this was all behind. They were afraid of like COVID and stuff, and they didn't want to put a whole big production inside, and then COVID slams us down. So that's why we did it inside Checkers' offices in San Francisco.
One thing that interests me that I just want to take back, like your first experience going to Pelican Bay too, is because at this time you still were in that mindset where race was a thing that was very large, right?
Yeah.
Obviously at the time. What was that experience like now going into there? Because we've interviewed a lot of individuals with Blacks, Hispanics, all that. What that experience was like. How was that for you, integrating in there?
I remember. So I mean, as you may know, or I don't know if your audience knows, but Asians were the smallest group in there. So I remember we'd come out to our table, and there's like 10, 12 of us. But yet we have to stand at our table every day because if we don't do it, then we don't have a table. So we just have to stand there in the shivering cold, trying to light our cigarettes and with our yellow rain jackets on and freezing cold.
Like that?
Yeah, it's cold.
Right?
It's cold.
It's basically Washington, right? Or Oregon or something.
Yeah, it's
up
at the
there.
border. It's cold. It gets cold.
Rainy, cold.
Yeah, it's raining.
something.
That's why it's cold and it's shivering. So yeah, so it's like everybody's shaking and yeah, but we just have to stand around and just look at each other because you can't play handball because it's raining. There's no sports to play. You just stand around the table because yard's open. You have to represent and just stand around.
You're right. I forget about that. Like the mindlessness that's involved in that.
Yes.
You just have to be there.
Yeah.
Just showing face. You hate it. It could be either on the worst end, cold as hell, or on the hot end, it could be 120 degrees, and you just have to be there, huh? That's the culture.
Yeah.
So you would think you still have that freedom to at least walk in the yard like nothing, but even then you still have to abide by some
Yeah,
stuff
you
too.
would
And
think,
that
right?
part.
So
I mean,
definitely.
exactly. Yeah. So then that experience was just was it mind-boggling? Like, was it a little crazy for you knowing that you had such a small community compared to everybody
No, because I
else?
think I was already. That's how it was for us at the juvenile hall,
Yeah.
and in the county jails. We're always outnumbered, so it's like for us, it's like okay, since we're outnumbered, then we have to be more violent, and if things happen, I think this is where we have to pull more weapons or whatever. Just always have to go above and beyond to protect ourselves, or at least make it feel like that it's not worth it to go at it with us.
Higher level participation was required on your guys' part
Yeah.
to like keep.
Oh yeah, I mean internally we always said there is no such thing as a second round. You better be out for the first round to all go to the hole together. Because if you're the one stuck in the cell and only it's gonna be what 300 Mexicans fighting you or 200 Crips or Bloods jumping you and one dude. Yeah, so that's why we're always on the yard. And you have to be on it. Like if it's going down, it's going down. Just we better be the first group to go out.
What was your experience like? Because I'm assuming you went to the shoe at one point, right?
No, I
No.
because of so at Pelican Bay that was they had us on a soft shoe program. They called it that because I guess the officers just got attacked, so they were like they're only letting small groups come out at a time. I had gone to the hole at the county jail when we rioted against the police, so they threw us in there. I remember they stripped us down and sprayed us all and kept us in the hole there for what was like 6-7 months, just fighting with the police up in the county jail too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's large. So a lot is happening with your experiences. I guess when did you kind of start getting to the what was happening with visits? Because even you're in Pelican too, visits were
There were no visits at Pelican Bay. Yeah, that was way too far from my family. But yeah, there was no visits there. I didn't get visits till I got to Donovan. But Donovan was a different spot because I think that's where I began to get involved with sports, and I think that's where that got me to see the race thing differently. Yes, we were still on different races, but now, there's this group of dudes that plays football that are all black, and there's all Hispanics, and then yet we could still have a banter, and I got to see them differently. Yeah, like wait, we're all just incarcerated here. Yes, there's still this tension, but it's not like I don't know them. They're not mindless, and so I think that's where sports started to change a little bit of that YA mentality in me.
And then I think as the years go by as well, you're just such in a small, close quarters. Eventually, you're going to get to know different cultural mannerisms. You're going to get to know just the walk of life for different folks. And then you get accustomed to it. And you're like, I know what it is to be with somebody up north, even though you've never been up north, or something like that.
Yeah, you start to see that. And I think for myself, especially by the time I got to Solano, because at Solano, it's dorm living. So now...
Is it? Okay.
So yes, my bunkie is the same race, but now I'm living in the same dorm of different races. You go out to the day room. So then those, and by that time we were all lifers.
Yeah.
So it's like the graveyard for lifers. So that I think that also, that shared bond right there kind of started to make me look at things a little bit different. Not totally, but a little bit differently. And then, yeah.
So you mentioned something about at that time when people were getting sentenced to life, you weren't seeing any lifers come home. What was your mentality moving from Pelican Bay to Donovan, a 3-yard? You probably get a little more access. Was your mind focused on continuing the path that you were going on, which is the homies, the this and that?
Yeah.
Or was it, or like I'm thinking, would have been the I want to go home route if you didn't see that yet at that time?
Yeah, I think. Of course, we all say we want to go home, but I didn't see a way. Like my appeal it was at Donovan that my appeal got shot down. So it was basically, okay, my paperwork's done with. I'm dying in here. It's like, but we just push it off. Okay, so I'm just gonna work out. I'm gonna play sports. This is how I'm gonna do my time. Still do. I'm a hustle, and then that continued to inform me leading into a Soledad, and then Solano. Once I hit there, even when I hit Solano, what was that? 07, 08? I can't remember. Right around there. I think that's when Henry Lawrence came around. The ruling for by for the woman Sandra Lawrence. It was like became big news because like the very first woman life term prisoner that argued up to the Supreme Court, like what's the difference between life without possibility and life with the possibility, because it doesn't look like California's seeing any difference. And they had like 30 years of data to go back to and look, oh crap, she's onto something. They're not paroling nobody. So then I think that's where that first ruling that maybe opened the doors just a little bit for some lifers. But then when I looked at it, it's like factors of suitability, and I'd see the list, never been arrested, had a good prison record, higher education. Then the other side is like prior arrest, gang involvement, blah, 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 and all those. And I go, I still don't qualify, and the vast majority of us still don't qualify. And we didn't hear of anybody going home anyway. So there was just that contributed to it. But I think that's around when I first heard like there may be a little bit of an action, but still it was like, yeah.
It was unheard of.
Yeah.
And then the 3 strike dudes were still in there, barely fresh, 4 or 5 years in their sentences.
Yes, yeah.
And they were realizing like, oh, this 3 strike is for real.
Yeah.
I really got 3 strikes for stealing some underwear or something, you know? I'm sorry, go ahead, B. I lost my train of thought, but
no,
man, that's intense.
Because I want to get to now what led to the book, right? You had an experience when you were incarcerated that led to writing a fantastic book that now anybody could check out on any platform, right? You have it on Amazon.
Everywhere.
Anywhere.
Amazon, Audible, everywhere. Yeah, you can.
So can you talk to us about that experience that led to?
Yeah, I think one of the things for myself on how I escaped, not only through sports, but it was through books. Like I'm a bookworm, a huge book. Like I go to prison law library, check out 3 or 4 books at a time. I'm known to read 3 or 4 books at a time, depending on what I want to, like, oh, let me escape to this world, or let me learn more about this. So
Dictionary on the side?
Dictionary on the side, yeah, to help me understand some more words. And so I also have this tendency to go down rabbit trails. Let's say I really like a book on this subject, then I'll look in the back of the table of the acknowledgments and, oh, who influenced this book? And I look at other books and that gives me different titles. Hey, this looks interesting. So I just go down different
rabbit holes.
Rabbit holes, yeah.
Of different authors.
Different authors, different genres. And I've always loved books on entrepreneurships and entrepreneurs in general and business. So I remember around at Solano, I was reading quite a bit of books on entrepreneurship and business books. I used to have like a Wall Street Journal subscription. I used to love like being involved with all that. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And then go down these rabbit trails. I can't remember what book I was reading, and I became very fascinated on books on the saints, and particular stories about saints that had failed in their lives, but then had turned it around and gone on to create legacies or created the orders of the different orders that they did. So I became very fascinated on those stories, which then led me down books on mindfulness and spirituality. And so like all these books became like a perfect storm in my head. And I began just reading all these ones. Also, I had met this one of my good friends at the time, Donnie. He's home now, but he also sat down with me like, hey, I can't remember, like he began coaching me on different things about my own personality, and he got me to examine myself. So it came this perfect storm in my head, and I was standing on a prison yard one day, and I was like, man, like fresh readings on mindfulness and things like that. And then I go, why do I have to view prison as punishment? Why can't I look at this as a place where I can remake myself, even if I'm supposed to die in here? And, of course, the answer from the universe comes back and says, yeah, you can. And I remember that moment very well because I was standing at the prison fence. At Solano, they have these hills, and the sun was barely coming up over, and I could feel the warmth. In the little blades of grass, I could see the individual drops of dew. And then up above me in the razor wire, I heard a sparrow chirping. And I tell you, like, the sparrows had probably been chirping my whole prison term, my whole wire term, and I never heard them. And these sparrows are everywhere on these prison yards, They land on the razor wire. I don't know if you ever noticed, like, they all have stubby feet because they landed wrong when they're, yeah. And so...
mutated?
Yeah, they're all mutated. Yeah, so I remember seeing it, and then I would have to say from that day forth, prison was not longer this harsh, cold, ugly place. It became a place where I felt connected to other human beings, other men. Some of them much further along on the journey. Some of them perhaps not even awakened yet. But I looked like, oh crap, we're all just here on this journey. So then I became fascinated every day. Like, what else can I learn about myself? What else can I do? One of the first things I did is I checked in with a therapist, and that's where I began the process of grieving my father's death.
While incarcerated?
While incarcerated. This is like 25 years after he passed away, and this is where I first began mourning it. And then being the consummate bookworm, I get fascinated with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's model on grief and loss. And I started reading all these books on grief and loss and what this. So then I noticed, wait, all these guys around me are also grieving, whether it's grieving because they've lost a family member that's passed on, or a wife or a partner that's left them, or kids that no longer talk to them, or even something as seemingly harmless as being moved from one prison to another, but yet they've left behind friendships that they cultivated for years and now, and unable to talk about it. And I saw this pain and this need for healing, so I put together a syllabus and I submitted it to the prison psychologist. The psychologist loved it, and we started the prison's first ever grief and loss group. Wow. And suddenly I'm in there firsthand, and I get to see, oh shit, now I feel alive for once in my life. Now my life has meaning. So then I get involved with other groups. I create other groups, and then that just began building this momentum within me. Like, this is what it's about. This is what making an impact is about. This is how I can serve the men around me, and this is where I am in this little forgotten corner of the world that nobody would ever know about, but yet I am alive and I am making a difference, and I'm making an impact. And that just became for me like, oh, this is how I want to live my life, even if I'm supposed to die. And suddenly inside prison with the life sentence, I feel absolutely free. And in also my bookworm travels, there was this other guy that loved to also read books, and him and I would share books all the time. And then for some reason, he one day gives me his parole hearing transcripts. The parole hearing transcript, nobody shares it in there, but he let me read his. He had 7 of them. I think the man had been down like 30 years at the time, went to 7 different hearings. Damn. And when I read it, I saw like, wait, what he told me said happened, or what he kind of says happened, and what actually happens in the parole hearing are 2 different things. Mm-hmm. And I'm reading, because it shows, it's the actual transcript. It says like inmate so-and-so, parole commissioner, and it says what they ask and what they say. So I'm reading and I go, crap, I think I know why he's not getting to go home. So, and it's not his crime. So then I sat with him and said, hey, I think I know why you're not able to parole. So he sat down with me, and I started walking him through the parole process. So people saw like,
he was open to that. He wasn't like a little.
No, it was weird because I think because him and I were reading the same books, and it kind of contributed to a different way of looking things just a little bit differently. So he was open to it, and I didn't know what I was doing. But I think so. Another of my friends sits down, and there's 3 of us now, and we're talking about the parole process. So people are like, "What are you guys doing?" And he's like, "Oh, Quan's helping me prepare for the parole board." Which then the guys scoff like, how can Quan help you prepare when he's never even gone to the board? You guys are all crazy, right? But I was like, man, I think this is so in alignment with how I see the world and what showing up in the world and personal responsibility, all these things I was fascinated with. So my other friend that sat with us goes to the parole board and is found suitable. And that just opened the floodgates. Like, people are like, what the hell?
So now everyone wanted to talk to Quan, huh?
And or him or group. Like, they're like, oh. Yeah. But then I go, okay. So then for me, I was like, crap, I know this amazing sense of freedom. And I got it not from going home, but it's just by showing up and owning parts of myself that still need refinement. So then in beginning to help coach the guys prepare for the board, for me, it's like, I already have this sense of freedom that I want to share with them. They're sitting with me because they want to go home, but I want to get them to a place where they feel good inside already before they go home, and more importantly, once they go home. And that was like
That's so important.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And even the guys that didn't get to go home, but as long as they come to a place of, I am content and happy and have forgiven myself, and that's the place that I was trying to get the guys to. So, yeah. I would say like those last few years, I helped like maybe 12, 14 guys go home. which is not an insignificant amount, right? But we think the amount of lifers that are in the state of California,
Right.
like 40,000. So that was nothing. So
But that's huge. That's a huge accomplishment given the time, given the fact that people weren't coming home.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't really start coming home till 14?
probably, yeah, I think, yeah, around there, 14.
Sprinkled 2011 and 12,
But those guys were getting cut from the courts. I think because I paroled in 2015, and it was still, I think, less than 3-5% of us of lifers were coming at the time. I think it's changed for much better now. The rates are higher, but it still needs to
There's
be a lot
contact
higher.
number out there? Like someone that's doing the data?
I think
for them?
CDC's website.
They track that.
Yeah, they
Okay,
track
they
it.
should
They,
have
they
it.
say the percentage, so the website should have it.
You know, I'm also kind of like fascinated by the fact that you never mentioned that this is coming from like the prison. This sounds like it's from your own accord, your own
Right.
willpower to make these things happen.
Yeah, yeah.
So the rehabilitation came from you within and from the decision.
And
that
with
you
other
made.
men around that
Yeah.
are looking to make a change, yeah, because I were like, don't get me wrong, like when I left, I felt there was a part of me that felt really guilty. I go, man, there's so much more deserving men here that are doing much better work, that did much less violence in their lives, and yet are still stuck in here. But yeah, I think that's just how I think this happened around my Sparrow and the Reservoir moment happened around probably 2010, 11 around there, and so like those last 3-4 years, yeah, I was able to lay out a bunch of good framework for how I wanted to live my life
Was there
and how I wanted to show up.
was there a story that kind of caught you from those 12 to 14 that you helped, that you were like, wow, and helped you realize even more, something more empowering that you probably haven't touched on? Or that just helped you realize something even larger than what you already had going on?
One of the guys that I helped, I can't remember how I found out. We were on the same yard. One of my best friends, when I was in the gang, my homegirl was killed by this other gang. He was from that gang. And I didn't know it till later. At first, like, we were on the yard, so cool, me and him getting along. And when I found out he was from this gang, it was like a weird mind fuck for me. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Weird feeling,
Yeah, like,
kind of like.
You didn't know how to,
Damn.
was it because you didn't know to be mad, sad, or
yes.
frustrated?
Or like, wait, this is somebody that I would have
Right.
easily been okay with shooting and killing. And I imagine I've shot at this guy before, and I imagine he shot at me, and like, but yet he's so cool and we get along, and yet now I feel I can't. And there was this whole dynamic. So so that was always there, and we never brought it up. I never brought it up with him that I knew. When I was able to start helping guys, I think he saw me helping the guys, and I was like, hey, I think I can, you want me to sit with you? And he's like, and he was always wishy-washy about it. And I was like, listen, if you're uncomfortable because in sitting with me, I asked for your transcript, I asked for your stuff, and it's gonna say what gang you're from, I'm okay with that. I know where you're from.
Right.
Man.
And which I think blew his mind. So then we sat down and boom, 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 we got him prepped in parole board. So he was found suitable. And I remember him telling me, he's like, you of all people, my own enemy, like from the streets, and you would sit with me. He goes, so I think that was one. I mean, all those guys are amazing.
I
Every single one.
think just it's so important because I think that highlights the hell out the fact that you did exhibit change and reform. If that's not a clear example of that, you know what I mean? Without having to do it because CDC's asking you, not parole, not an agent, nothing. You're doing that because that's who you are and that's how you've changed. You know what I mean? That's huge, bro. Huge. Some people still
Thank you.
parole and don't fucking snap out of that.
Yeah.
One
it's
big
intense.
circle that I see on that part too
Yeah.
is the idea, like, you started off, you were enemies, at the end of the day you guys are friends, but that just shows, these are individuals that have either gone through, felt the same way, or have gone through exact same kind of lifestyle you've been through. We're all the same, like you said it too, we're all humans. That's what you started feeling with the Sparrow. You started connecting with these individuals. So it's so empowering that this is something that could be caught even at an early stage, at a young age. They could find their Sparrow, they could see their Sparrow, and that's something that I hope like some of our audiences get. Like,
Yeah, man, that's a constant mission.
exactly. That's the biggest. Yeah, that's like the biggest mission out of all. To find that Sparrow. So now you started working with these individuals. You started helping people parole. Now, when did that kind of like? It's ironically when you started going into these meetings, like, were you getting help, or did you feel like you already knew?
Or
how to
that,
go
or I'm
about
thinking,
it?
exactly. How did you implement all the stuff you were teaching
Right.
now for your own thing? Because that's
Well, I think became a constant sense of like refinement, like seeing my friend tell me what happened in the parole board and reading what happened and seeing it's totally different to inform me like there's this narrative he's been telling himself and it's over the years. And then it made me think, what narrative have I been telling myself that over the years? So I started looking back and unraveling like, wait, I told myself this narrative and this is no longer true. So I had to start listening for myself. So I think every time I learned from these guys, I would try to apply it to myself. I mean, I began journaling, so that became a place where I could be very honest. It became a container where I could just examine my thoughts and just like lay out like things I wanted to continue to hopefully work on. Let's say I read about how to effectively communicate, and then I want to practice it. And then you and I get in an argument on the yard, and I'm trying to effectively communicate, but it doesn't work because I forget that I want to effectively communicate, and I revert back to my old self. Then I come back to my journal. This is where I failed today. This is where I could fix it next time. This is what I would have done. And I just started going through that process. So then the next thing I began the process. So it was like years later, I look back through my old journals, and I'm reading things that I wanted to practice and realizing, shit, this is where the seed was planted, and yet this is what I've been doing for the past few years. I've evolved past that old person. Yeah. So I think that became this really huge sense of accomplishment in myself, and then it gave me this sense of how can I still continue to learn from those all around me to make myself a better person. And that's just, so I think, I mean, that process is still there to this day. I look at it like, okay, what can I still learn from people around me?
How many parole meetings did you go through to get released?
2. I was released on my second one. The first one I went in, they gave me a 5-year denial.
So how many years were you in at that time? Was this already like 20 in or something like that?
No, I've done a total of 22 years, but on the life sentence, I did 16 and a half total.
Okay. Which shows that you did something perfectly in order for them to have paroled you. Most people we hear, even in our past interviews, it sucks. They end up doing like 25, 30-ish for murder cases and stuff like that.
I think remember the 25, 30 or somebody doing 40 years, if they had come in during the 70s and 80s and 90s and did their time then and gone to the parole, even if they ran a perfect program, they would not have got paroled because of the mindset of the parole board at the time. And I think the belief so I mean, the data is there from 77 to 07. They did not parole a single life-term prisoner. Maybe they might have pardoned a couple, or maybe people that had connections like with politicians or like a cop, a police killer. I mean, a policeman that did a killing or something. So those were the very rare ones that got out through a governor, like parole board, and then the governor doesn't pull the date.
That sucks. We definitely need to highlight that a lot more, just in general. You know, like how a lot of people got pretty much F. They got fucked. You know?
And so I mean, like, so there's like I know like the OGs, like the ones that had like the B and the C and the D numbers that continue to go to board during that time and got hammered, and yet so when we meet them, we're like, oh, this is an old bitter man, but never taking into account what happened to them during those years on how they were traumatized of going to a board over and over and over, having it be hopeless, and have the board like hammer them, and then they just go into a shell of themselves, or they have this narrative like the board's gonna screw me. Why am I gonna show up? I mean, I know guys that still refuse to go to the board because of a bad experience at a parole hearing decades ago.
So many good things going on. Like even now, somebody.
I know of yes, the possibility is there, but I think it's. I mean, I know of a older father figure of mine that's in there that still has not gone back to the parole board. He's probably gonna die in there, and it's not because his crime is any more heinous than the next person. It's just. He doesn't want to.
Still trying to find himself, or is it more so like he's just still angry at the idea of what happened?
I think it's more for him personally. I think it's more he's able to help so many men around, but like to your question, is he able to help himself? And I don't think he's got to that place.
That's the important part, right?
Yes.
What good is it if you can't incorporate that stuff into your own life?
Mm-hmm.
So you end up going to the parole board twice. What happens the first time that they didn't find you suitable?
They gave me a 5-year denial. This was back in 2013.
Were you already helping people at this time?
Yeah.
Sorry. So that's kind of
Yeah,
ironic.
yeah.
Wouldn't you think like they've seen your success with others, but then you
They
go,
did, but then I had quite a few write-ups to answer for because my very first
They
hearing.
were still taking those into account, huh?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They were still taking those into account, and then I remember the commissioner said 5 years. So everybody at the time thinking a 5-year denial. I remember when I came back to the yard, of course the naysayers would like, "See, Quan doesn't know shit.
Oh,
like, how's he helping you guys?"
Damn.
But the ones that my true friends came to check on me, hey, that sucks. We believe in you. You've done a lot of good. And I filed for my 1045 petition to advance the hearing about a year and 2 months after, which at the time everyone's like, "You're crazy. You're supposed to wait 3 years." And I was like, "Where does it say we have to wait 3 years?" And they said, "Well, everybody knows. You know that prison mentality that everybody knows, and it's just this."
It becomes folklore.
See, but
Yeah.
I've heard, like, I feel like I know already
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
But
Me too, right? Now
Yeah,
that you
like-
just said that,
yes.
I assumed there was always 3, and then you can maybe
Exactly.
do.
I put it in at 1 year, 2 months, and so the guys on the yard and I was very straightforward. The parole, it was just 1-page thing. I see guys submitting like these legal bigos saying they're prison attorneys. They put 20, 30 pages, submit the packets. All I did was I put the thing. I said the commissioners denied me for this, this, and this. Since then, these are the classes I've taken to address that, and that. These are the books I read to. So I respectfully request that my circumstances may have changed, and I'm respectfully requesting an advancement in a hearing. They granted it. So then people on the yard like, "Oh, they only advanced it so they could deny you, because once they deny you, then I can't file again for another 3 years."
Wow, so you're just
What-
getting people that are just like trying to shoot you down.
Well, I think, but that's
that's
the
what I was
prison
thinking.
mentality. I think there's a lot of things like
You're
that. So
right.
yeah, I think
Some
it's
people aren't where you're at, and so they're not there yet. But what's trippy is though, once you get out, the same dudes that were acting like that, they may get that spark.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And that's
they're
the hope.
okay, that's the hope. Right?
Yeah, but then I went in, so I filed a year and 2, and even inside the thing, inside my hearing, the DA, he said something to me. He's like, "You hear the prisoners talking about all this remorse and all how bad he feels, but yet, Mike," and I guess there was part of the question. He asked me, "Why did the prisoner, if he feels so bad, why did he file a petition to advance the hearing a year and 2 months after his thing? If he felt bad, why didn't he just wait the whole 5 years?" So I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I was like, okay, look, I could sit here all day and tell you how bad I feel, but if I sit here and just not like and feel sorry for myself and say, okay, I never deserve to go home. I killed a living, breathing human being. I can never bring anybody like that back. So I can sit here and feel sorry for myself, or I can move on and have to learn to forgive myself. What good does it do for me to sit in prison? What good does it do for the men on the yard if I'm helping them to tell them there's a way out? What good does it do for my family? So that's why I'm here today. I'm here to hold myself accountable. So I think it was a weird question the way he asked it, but I almost fell into the trap of, you know what, you're right. Yeah, I don't know. But,
Really? Oh.
yeah.
So I want to go now to what took place on the second one, because what changed. Like, I want to hear if you're willing to talk about what is some of the stuff you said during that time. We'd love to hear that. But what happened that day?
I mean, it's all in the book. Yeah, I detail it. I think I just showed up. I showed up and was just my genuine self. I mean, I owned everything that I did, before leading up to prison, all my stuff throughout my prison term. Yeah, and I think the commissioner just saw, like, you know what, it makes sense. Like, I don't think this person is dangerous. But even that hearing, I thought they were on me, and I thought I'm not getting denied. I'm not.
That's the one where the dude's saying, "You haven't learned enough. Year and a half. You haven't remorsed enough."
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, they said-
And I tell people, yes, there was a crime committed. You're taking accountability for that, but we're not the judge. Who's the judge to say that this amount of time is what you should be getting? That's why there's a judicial system to decide that. You know, and you use that process, and you actually showed reform. There's a panel of people you have to go through to come home, right? They don't just let you. Every person that thinks they're ready to come home, no, they vet you. You know. What is one thing, and I kind of wanted to touch on this, just for the audience that may have family members going through this. What are some of the things that, let's say, for example, some people out there have life or uncles, dads, something like that, that they may be doing wrong when they get denied? what are some of those things that they're doing wrong? And one, for example, I hear a lot that they want you to admit to the crime, and people tend to say, it wasn't me. It really wasn't me. And it sucks. I really think it sucks because some people, it really wasn't them, but they have to admit it in some way, shape, or form in order to move forward. Is that stand true?
I think I know where you're going, and I think a lot of so it's not as black and white as I didn't commit this crime or I didn't. I think the question is more. I think men sometimes and or women inside have this mistake of I didn't do. After I wasn't the shooter, and after the shooting, I didn't throw the bottle out the right side. I never threw a bottle, and they get stuck on that piece instead of what are you owning? What is your component in this? What are you exactly responsible for? And they want to get hung up on. Well, this is the one thing that they're wrong, or these are the 5 things that they're wrong about me. Like, what does it really matter? Don't even talk about that. Who cares? Like, now, if it's part of the record, yeah. So I think it's more, what are you taking responsibility for? If you didn't pull this trigger, that's fine. What did you contribute in this? And I think that's the more important piece for people to get to.
Okay, that's huge. That's important. Like you said, and I think I personally even everyone I think does in their initial stages of incarceration. Yes. You're just like, you have this scenario of the way it went down and you're sticking to it.
Yes.
And realistically, it's even scary to dissect it because you're like, I didn't really go down like that. It went down a different way, you know?
Or like they interpret it differently, or like they say, oh, yeah, like I think where I see it happen a lot with some of the guys also that are in for like domestic murders, like they're killing their wives or their partners. And I'm like, oh, they said this here, that's not true. This is not true. And so like, what does it matter? Okay, who cares? That's not true. What does it matter? Like, what are you responsible for in this?
One thing I feel like that could probably tie into is the idea, like, even at like a lot of these interviews at a young age, we're already getting exposed to the idea of things getting blamed on them. Like, even like they were just getting blamed, like you did this, you did this, you did this. So when they're so used to trying to prove themselves, like, no, like I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that. So it comes to like when their case happens and it takes place or anything like that, they're pointing out the stuff they didn't do. I mean, that's the way I'm trying to connect it in a way, but
they haven't grown and they don't know how to they haven't grown new ways to handle those situations, and so they go back to I didn't do it that way. Look, it says it there. Yeah. When in reality, you're past that. You should have grown past that to understand. Like you said, you're not understanding the totality of it, not just those pieces of it. Man, so the commissioner finds you suitable for parole. So what happens there? We know that you sit around for maybe 10 minutes, and then you go back to the yard? Or?
Yeah, I go back to the yard, and then from
there...
Smile,
no smile?
Right, what did the guy say?
I was crying.
Like, now you know you're
good. Like, yeah, I mean, there were like a bunch of my good friends, of course, were very happy. And yeah, then people just come up and congratulate me, and it's like, I realized, though, that's 150 days, right? Because once you're found suitable, you have 150 days. Well, 120 days first, the timeline begins for them to make sure they did everything correctly. Then they have 30 days to give it to the governor for him to sign off on it. And that's the window that they yank. And I don't know, I looked at it like, okay, this is the 150 days I have to spend with these men before I may never see any of them again. So this is going to be my grieving process over these next 150 days. And so I was very intentional about how I spent the last 5 months there with the men because but it was like, I meant, okay, because I think I saw a lot of lifers that were paroling like, okay, like counting out, I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to get out. But I looked at it from a different way, like, man, these are the last 150 days that I get to spend with some of these amazing human beings that I'm going to leave behind. So let me make the most of my time with them. And that's how I approached the last 5 months.
That is a great perspective to look at. Just
selfless
flipping
approach.
It.
Mm-hmm. Selfless, right. I love it.
I'm assuming this is probably the longest, well, not the longest, probably the quickest 5 months now, seeing that you're flipping and you're trying to help so many people, but there's not enough time.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like it went by quicker for you?
It went by very quick. I think it was just like right around the corner. Like, I remember it was before I even had an idea of writing a book like this. There's this amazing guy in there, the one I told you, like the father figure I had. Okay, yeah. And he has such an amazing story, and there's so much depth in him. And I was like, damn, this would be a shame that the world would never hear about this amazing human being that's doing all this work behind these walls. So I told him, I was like, hey, and I've always loved writing. I said, hey, these next 150 days, can we sit together 30 minutes, 5 days a week? You could just kind of tell me your story. I'll document it, and I'm going to put something together. I'd love to write something and put it together and give it to your family as a gift of the work that you do. But I want to find out more about you, your history. And he tells me, yes, let's do this.
Wow.
We scheduled, I think, for the following week to sit down. An excuse comes up, then another excuse comes up, and he ends up pushing it off. And I realize, oh, he doesn't
You're
yet.
going home.
Yeah,
And staying.
and he doesn't want to share. And then there's like this. Yeah, so I was like, it was unfortunate, and I had to tell him like, damn, this really sucks. Like, what's going on? And it was like, but yeah, I knew like this is where our friendship is going its different ways, and yeah, so.
It was already basically on a timer. Damn.
So his story's lost.
It's lost.
Yeah.
It sucks. And I tell people same thing. I've ran into a lot of lifers that even on the last podcast I mentioned it. I was one of the youngsters that took it, and I used to see their youngster IDs and seeing a grown man in front of me, and I used to be like, I can never do this. Come back to this place to. That'll be a slap in the face. You know what I mean? Like this guy was my age, and look at the gentleman that I'm looking at now, who's 30 years older. He never got the chance, and I'm getting more than enough chance to come back and reintegrate and do what I got to do. You know, 5 months, quickest 5 months ever. Take us to your parole. When they walk you out, you give everything away, or however that went down.
So, I didn't share earlier. Grew up in Provo, Utah, right? As I shared.
Oh yeah.
But huge Dallas Cowboy fan, right? That's all they showed. People are like, how you come a Dallas Cowboy fan?
No, I'm just kidding.
So you must be a Niner fan or a Redskin fan or
I'm joking. No fan.
No. So my brother though is a diehard Redskins fan. That's just how we grew up, like opposing each other. The day of parole that I went down to get my parole clothes, and my brother was like, "Okay, I'm sending you your parole clothes. What you want? Jeans? You want this?" So I opened up my parole box, and inside it, there's a Washington Redskins like shirt. Yeah, so that's how my brother did it. Yeah, I paroled in a Washington Redskins shirt just for my brother, and he made me take a picture. So I took a picture, sent it to him. Yeah.
And Solano?
Right? At Solano. So I went
up north?
Yep, up north. So I went to Sacramento Airport. I flew out there. So, okay, funny story on this is leading up to it, I started researching how do I get on a plane? And everyone's telling me TSA is never going to let you on a plane. You don't have an ID.
Right.
And then I want to get on a plane. And like the guys around me, my group of friends, like, you need, like my boss at work, like everyone was trying to talk me out of it. And I'm like, why is everybody so against me trying to get on the plane? Like, what's the worst they're going to do? They're not going to let me on that plane. I guarantee you, I'm still going to be the happiest dude in the airport that day. Or what's the worst they could do? Bring me into the back, bring me into the back room and make me strip search me, or it's nothing. Yes, nothing new, right? So why are you guys so opposed to this? And I swear to God, there was so many people opposed to even my family was talking about this. I was like, send me my old driver's license. I got that, and then and I had the prison ID. So when I got out, I went to TSA, got to the thing, and I showed the guy. And I remember I kind of talk about it in the book, like the guy when he's looking at, he's like, "Can I have your ID, sir?" And then I give him the ID. He's like, "What ID is it?" Because those old green ones, right, from the 90s.
Back then, the height and everything, the little bars.
I think so. I can't remember.
It just looks like a prisoner ID, right?
It was those old ones. And then I just got out of prison. Here's my prison ID. And I give it to him. I've done 16 years. I look at the dude. He looks like about 19, 20. He's probably 3 or 4 years old when I went in.
Correct.
And he's like, oh, hold on. Let me talk to my supervisor. So he gets the supervisor. She comes to me. I tell her the same thing. Look, I just got out of prison after 16 and a half years. This is the only ID I have. This is my prison ID. This is my old driver's license. And she looks at me, looks at the ID, looks at me, and is like, welcome home. Let me right on through.
Wow.
My first tears of the day, yeah. Those were my first tears after getting out. So that's was
huge.
Flew from Sacramento into Long Beach, and my brother picked me up right there. My family picked me up.
So was this your first time riding on a plane?
No.
No,
I
okay.
flew
I was
in
about to say,
Did
what
you
was
have
that
like a
experience
clear
like?
bag and everything with your property or the last?
The
remnants of
only thing I walked out of prison because I had sent out my prison journals.
Okay, so all your phone numbers were safe at home already.
Yeah,
The old
just all the
contacts
journals I
and-
had over the year. I had this little phone book that I still had with me that I
Okay.
carried. And one of the things I did after my first hearing is I gave myself the gift of learning how to play a guitar. So I carried out my guitar, but everything else I left behind. All my CDs, all my stuff I left behind. So I only walked out with the guitar and my little notebook. Yeah, I remember sitting in the airport waiting for it to pick me up, for the plane to pick me up. Most beautiful sunset outside the window, and everybody's down on their phone. Nobody's looking up and noticing. I'm seeing like,
man.
what is this
That
world
is
out here?
So interesting. Yeah.
What is this world? But that's the world I stepped into, right? And now I
Was it really that? Like you were really looking at them and you're like, what are they doing? Like
no,
that?
because I'm seeing the beautiful sunset at Sacramento
Correct.
Airport, and everybody's just on the phone. Nobody is enjoying that sunset. And I go, oh, maybe it's just me because I'm coming out of prison, but I still enjoy the sunsets.
That's so like that's
Yeah,
so big.
man.
Like it makes me regret why did I not look out the window? Why am I not sitting outside right now? Like because even then it's a beautiful view being on a plane and being able to see everything, right? That's another thing in itself. But I just look, I'm like, oh, that's dope. But you don't realize this is your life. Like you can take advantage of this. You can really enjoy this.
Take
There are
it all in,
Yeah,
you know?
people cannot do that. There's so many people that can't. And it's sad to say it's because they either grew up in a bad environment that led them to have to survive for what they had to do and things like that led to mistakes or led to, situations that now they've reformed, they've redeveloped.
Yeah.
And it's just so empowering to hear that. But it sucks at the same time because now it's getting worse and worse. And everything.
I'm sure you probably wanted to maybe ask someone a question or
Right.
something, and that was an automatic kind of like red flag. You're like, do I even?
Yes, I mean,
Stop
no,
them
because
or
even like
ask-
when we flew into Long Beach from the thing, I saw this woman next to me. She was taking pictures of it, and it looked beautiful. I was like, "Oh man, I want that picture. I want to memorialize this." But I didn't know how to ask her for it. Like, what am I gonna say? Hey, can you send that picture to one of my family members? Like, this is their number. Like,
No phone yet. Then.
yeah, I don't have a phone.
No
Like,
phone, no
and then she'll be like,
nothing.
"What do you mean? Where's your phone? Like, why take
Yeah,
your own
that-
picture?"
that-
I didn't know how people were gonna react.
That's nuts.
Like you got an email? Like I can email too.
That would have been the response without a shadow
Right.
of a doubt. It's like, you don't have a phone? Where's your phone? And then you get into the awkward discussion.
Yeah.
Awkward for them, not for you. Right now, I'm sure you know how to, like, yeah, this is what I'm doing now, right? It becomes easier with time. You meet up with bro. He sees you with the Redskin jersey.
Right.
You guys embrace. What's the deal?
Yeah, go to his house. Mom's is there. My younger sister, my brother's wife, my little niece.
Wow,
We had a
whole
family.
life.
Yeah,
Whole
A
fam
whole new
bam, huh?
life that
yeah.
that you didn't get a chance to see, right? What was that like?
I mean, that was too, like, my little niece was the cutest thing. I was like, damn, look at this little beautiful little human being. Like, reminds me of my brother when he was young with a girl. So yeah.
That's wild because like they started a whole family, like a wife, kids, and all that. And now, do you see that in your future at all, or like is that something you have going on right now? Like having a family and doing something like your brother does.
Well, I don't know if kids are in the cards for me. Yeah.
okay.
Not yet, at least.
Yeah, not yet.
You never know.
Right, exactly. So now I want to talk about what that transition
Yeah.
or was like, especially because it sounded like you had support your family. A lot of individuals, when they come out, sadly, they don't have that.
Yeah.
Or they try to find programs. So what was that like for you with that transition?
Well, I remember, so my sister, I stayed with my brother. I remember that first night, I could not sleep. I fell asleep when I woke up and it was just too quiet. I was like, what the hell?
Oh.
It was, because usually you hear the men shuffling in their sandals, the keys of the cops walking, the toilet flushing, like all of that.
Something going on. Huh?
Something, there's movement, whispers of men talking, and it was just absolutely quiet. And I can't sleep. I go, wait, why I need to sleep? Let me get up. And then I tried to watch TV, and I turned on the TV, and then there was like 200-300 channels, and I'm like, what is this? How do I figure this out? Like, I go, where is just like PBS or something that I could watch? And so I couldn't figure that out. Then I go, okay, let me make some coffee. And I'm searching, and all he has is a coffee machine. I go, where's the
Correct.
instant coffee?
Where's the
so,
Folgers at?
Yes, so none of that. So I remember, so I have to wait like several hours before he gets up, and like, Yeah, so I remember that first night. It was, I think I barely slept that first week. It was just, I was so excited, happy to be home. And yet it's just trying to figure out the world out here. Yeah.
What was there any disconnect between you and your family at all? Those beginning weeks. 'Cause
Yeah.
It takes
Oh,
a
I mean,
toll on everyone.
Yes,
right?
I would say, I think I tell guys coming home from incarceration all the time, I think your biggest challenge is rebuilding those relationships.
Oh man.
Like it's not, yes, there's a technology learning curve on the phones and everything else, but those could be taught. But I think the most important piece that's going to be the most challenging is rebuilding of relationships or building of new relationships. So, because, of course, my family saw me one way of this knucklehead gang member that had a way of showing up and talking. And I think for them, there may have been this weird disconnect. Like, wait, how is he showing up like this now? Is he saying, is this true? Is
he a con artist
yes,
or something?
Yes.
What
I
is
think,
going on here?
Yeah, so I think there was that until they just started seeing more. And then I ended up, because I can't remember, within like a month or something, I was like, wait, I think I'm going to go live with my sister. I think it was easier for me at the time to get to work and where I was for everything for me down there. Because I think, my brother and sister-in-law, like, talk about crazy hectic schedule. They wake up, drop the daughter off at school. And at the time they lived in Signal Hill. So it's like basically Long Beach. They drive down to Huntington Beach. She was going to private school. And then from there they go to yoga. And then there
That's
they
why
go
he doesn't
to...
want kids. That's exactly
then-
why it's a lot too much
Yeah,
to do.
and then they go to the company, his real estate company, and running that, and then going home, and then they're picking her up, and then they do all these things, then eat dinner. It's like, and I just was just exhausted. Like, I guess it was just information overload for me,
No
like just
more,
sensory overload.
No power naps, no none of
Yes,
that in between the
yes,
days.
I'm not,
You
that's
say
what I was.
that.
I was like,
Yeah.
don't you ever take naps? Like, naps? What do you mean naps? So yeah, I think, and then so I moved in with my sister. It was such a pleasant surprise because now, like, my sister, who I only knew as, like, okay, this little girl,
Kid.
and
Right.
Oh,
and then like,
man.
because me going in and out, and every time she's just a kid or like or like a young adult or something, but now she's like a career woman, has her own nice apartment. It's a place with a gym and it's barbecue and a swimming pool and like all the amenities throughout the whole place, downstairs places to eat. So this is like, I'm spoiled now, and I live with her, and just to see the beautiful, mature woman that she has become, and yet we can still have, and just being able to build that relationship and get to know her as a woman. Like I didn't know her. It's like, man, I'm so proud of.
Yeah, you're right. It's a different era for both of you guys
Yeah.
now. Post incarceration, and she's no longer a kid anymore.
Yeah. So it was just being able to see that and being able to talk through, because I think she also went through therapy to grieve my father's death.
I was gonna ask about
So
that, yeah.
her and I could have, like, whereas my mom never has. So she can't. I mean, my mom read my book up to chapter 3, and she's like, I can't read anymore, and she never touched it again to this day. And she can't talk about my father. So I remember even when I was writing, I go, do you remember when Dad did this? Why did this happen? And she talks a little bit, and then she's like tears up, and then she shoves it away and doesn't talk about it. I don't think my brother's ever formally grieved my father's death. So he was like when my grandfather was in the hospital, I could see my brother. He goes in, and his body's tensed up, and I'm sitting in the hospital all day, okay with it. And I saw my brother's like very uncomfortable. He's like, I hate the hospitals, and I hate being in this place. And I was like, it just takes me back, like, damn. So each of us have our own journeys and our own things to resolve.
Right. So with that too, so when did it start leading to the? You did the book later on, more later on, right?
Yeah.
So what was the next step after that? Like you started working. What was the next? Because you started. There's Defy Ventures stuff. There's Sparrow and then Razor Wire.
Yeah.
So we want to touch on that.
Okay, so
you
when I
started
was
your own
incarcerated,
business,
Right.
yeah. When I was at Solano, I joined Defy Ventures pilot program. So Defy Ventures is a nonprofit. Their mission is to shift mindsets to give people with criminal histories their best shot at a second chance to do like career readiness, personal development, and entrepreneurship training. So I remember when they launched the pilot program at Solano, I'm like, entrepreneurship, personal development, that's all me. Let me join in.
Reality, yeah.
Yeah, so I joined Defy while incarcerated. I paroled before I pitched my business. I was let go. So I stayed involved with them once I came home. And that's was a huge part of the reason why my mindset was already like, what's the opportunity and how am I going after it? What's the opportunity? So while working at my brother's real estate company, I used to see every day like, man, this janitorial company in here sucks. Because I used to work in the prison hospital. We used to run a crew, and we had that place like spick and span,
Yeah.
clean and everything. And I told my brother, the janitorial company here sucks. Why don't we create a janitorial company and I'll manage it.
Real quick, did he ever say like, that's something I never really thought of. Like I never thought.
No, well, he told me at the time, he's like, you can't just create a company like that, right? He's like, that I've been in business all these years, and you can't create a company. It's not that easy. There's a lot more that goes into this. So then, about a few months later, I found out the building owner was looking for a janitorial company. So I got the email from my sister-in-law, and so in Defy, they teach you, like, you always introduce yourself. My name is so-and-so. I'm the founder and CEO of blah, 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 right? Whatever. So that was the thing. So I was like, okay, first thing is, my name is Quan Huyn. I'm the CEO and founder of what? I don't know what the company's going to be called. So I started looking, like, what am I going to call it? So I went on to GoDaddy. Like, okay, I want it to sound like something valuable. Let me see, platinum janitors, gold janitors, and those are all taken. Yeah. So I go, what about jade janitors? Asians, we love the jade stone, and it kind of sounds similar. I looked up jade janitors, domain name open, $9.99. So I purchased it. So I wrote the email to the building owner. My name is Quan Huyn. I'm the founder and CEO of Jade Janitors. I hear you're looking for a quote. Start going down the process. I used to run a team at the hospital up in Northern California. I'm now down here. We'd love to do business with you, whatever. He's like, okay. He responds back and says, can you give me a copy of your business license and insurance stuff? Yeah. No, business license. So I'm like, what is this? So I asked my family, and they said, you have to go to the county courthouse. Then you have to do a doing business as. I went that same day, put it in the county courthouse, and I went to the city of Fountain Valley. I remember the city of Fountain Valley when he said, what is your name? He's like, how many employees do you have? I go, none right now. He's like, why are you calling it Jade Janitors? Why don't you call it Jade Janitor? Right? Yeah. And I, like, plural, right? Like, it was kind of clowning me. Yeah, and I go, I'm going to have more than one employee. So we're plural. It's going to be janitors. So I got that. I sent it back. And then the building owner says, can you give me a copy of your business insurance? So I didn't know what that was. So I got onto Google, what is janitorial insurance? Looked at all the different policies. And I think that was where my first big gamble at the time. Because it was like a couple $100 for the business license and everything already. But now it's like, you have to sign a contract. I have to give them my business license. I think it was like something like $400 plus another $80 a month, and I have to sign the contract for a year, so it's like $1,200. I think something like that.
Total to have that now.
To have the insurance component of the janitorial.
Okay.
So I got that part. So I purchased it. Same day, sent it off to the building owner. He's like, "Can you give me a quote?" So I worked in the building already. It'll probably take me about 3 hours to clean this place. I'm going to bring somebody in. I'm going to pay them for 4 hours of work. This is what I'll pay them. This is the margin I want. I sent the quote, and he said, can you guys start Friday? So that's how I got my first contract, yeah. But
wow.
Learned a million lessons
of... This is in the span of how long?
4 days.
What the hell?
4 days.
You started a business in 4 days.
Yeah, 4 days.
And I love that we highlighted that, man, because you know how many dudes that are incarcerated have the ideas and they have the stories. Some of which, even for myself, I don't put into practice. I didn't have the tenacity to keep it going to whatever. But you're actually one of those rare dudes that you knew this is what it is, and I am going to do it.
Yeah, that's what I think about. Like, people say, "Oh, was that luck? Was that?" I think it's a mixture of both. There's opportunities because at any time I could have walked away. Whether it's not even writing that first email, when he asked for the business license, when he asked for my insurance, I could have like, $1,200, this is not worth it. And then I'll be that guy talking about, I thought about building a janitorial company back in the days, but never go through with it. I'd rather be the one like, hey, I tried it, I failed here. I mean, like when I first started a company, we messed up so many things, learned so many lessons. Yeah, I mean, he said, can you start Friday? Me and my eagerness said, yes. I should have said, nope, let me get the right person in place. Let me start at the beginning of the month. How do I do invoicing? I had to learn all of that over the years. But yeah, I mean, company's still running to this day. Yeah.
It's amazing.
So 6 employees, 4 of them are also formerly incarcerated. My best workers, I tell everybody about by far. Yeah. So, I mean, during the pandemic, a highlight I'd like to share is that I was turned down for the PPP loan because of my criminal history.
Oh man!
So sorry, say that again. Because what?
Because of my criminal history. Like on one of the questions it says, "Are you on parole? have you been convicted of any felony? I had to check yes, and it grayed out. I couldn't continue. So I can't remember how people found out. Like CBS Money Watch, then CNN reached out to me, and then PBS NewsHour, like all of them, and then suddenly the ACLU reaches out and they said, "Hey, did you get turned down? Can you show us the paperwork of your company?"
Automatically turned. I mean, those people reached out to you. Just did you start throwing some stuff out there? To
I think I
social
can.
media?
Yeah, I think I can't remember exactly how they found. Like I did post.
That's
like
huge, man.
Yeah,
Like,
like I got freaking turned down. I think Defy Ventures, since I was working with them at the time, they also put it out like this. So then Defy actually became the lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit against the SBA, and we submitted on behalf of all small business owners with criminal histories, and we got that language changed. So I got the PPP loan. Yeah, that was a really cool thing that we were able to do.
You've come such a long way. Well, it's so fast too. Yeah, so fast. So what are the next? I guess what steps are you taking right now with your business to move forward?
I mean, well, so the pandemic really, I think my goal for, I remember I had wrote down my goal for 2020, right? Like the goal is to grow the company because we were already making six figures. The goal is to get us to $250,000 by the end of the year. That was like my goal. Pandemic happens, all the commercial properties close or like no one's renting.
Okay.
So we lost about 70% of our clients overnight. Cancel contract.
I would think it would have been the opposite because now they need cleaning and sanitizing.
But nobody's going into the office.
But no one's going into the office.
And at that time, they were able to like bankrupt without any kind of like any kind of concerns or situations. So a lot of businesses were taking that action, I think. So they were just shutting down.
Yeah, they were shutting down. Buildings got sold. So we lost like 70% of our clients like overnight. So then I had to pivot. You know, in the spirit of defying what we teach at Defy, you have to learn what's the problem, how are you solving it. So my problem was COVID. How do I solve it? Oh, we're a cleaning company. Why don't we learn how to sanitize? I know how to sanitize from prison. So we landed a pretty lucrative contract in the Pacific Northwest for a while. So I was servicing a high-end chain of restaurants throughout the Pacific Northwest. Okay. So those were doing good. So that saved our 2020. Yeah, and now it's like still growing the company, but I mean, I work full-time at Defy, so I tell people if I put 10 hours a month into my cleaning company, that's probably overstating how much time I put into it.
No way, really?
Yeah, and it runs. Yeah.
So that means, though, that you found somebody that you have 100% confidence in to make sure things are...
Yeah, and it's guys that I talked to from prison. Like,
were they guys that you were busted with?
Some before, some. Oh, and then there were others that I met along the way. I used to go to lifer parole meetings.
Okay.
And the guy comes up, I'm just home after 30-something years. I'm looking for work. If anyone gives... And I come up to him, hey, where'd you do? What work did you do in there? You ever do a porter position? You want work right here? I got you right here. If you want to get some part-time. And then there's so like, once I have little contracts, I could plug guys right. I mean... They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. I say, what do you mean you don't know what to do? You did the porter, right? You know how to sweep, you know how to mop, you know how to take inventory. These are all things you know how to do. The skills are transferable. That's one of the things at Defy that we always drive into the guys. These are transferable skills inside that you could apply out here.
Yeah. I love it, man. That's so powerful that again, one of those rare stories where you have these ideas, you put them into motion, and not only that, you literally give back to your people. You know, and I consider everyone formerly incarcerated my people, right? Because everyone understands that struggle. So for you to, I'm thinking you had to have thought on those things. How do I give back a little bit?
I think all that informed me because like the challenges I faced in launching my company, the support I wish I had out here, but yet so Defy expands out to because at the time they only had a Northern California chapter. I found out they were expanding down to Southern California, and they were looking to have someone build out their post-release program. Since I was in real estate, I had already helped my family. Like my brother had launched his restaurant, so I was there with him from concept to daily operations. So I was helping them be the general. So I learned a bunch in that. Once I heard Defy is expanding out here to SoCal, I was like, you know what? I think it's time for me to interview and move on. I want to do something with much more impact. So I interviewed for Defy's post-release position, and yeah, so I stepped. In 2017, I stepped into the role, began building out what does a post-release program look like out here in Southern California for men and women coming home from incarceration. So I got to be a key component of that. Now,
front lines again, huh?
Yeah, so I got to build on that. And over the years, my roles and responsibilities have grown. So like last year, I stepped into the role. I oversee our entire chapter in Southern California now. All our operations in the prisons, the transitional homes out here, the entire post-release program, and then our entrepreneurship pathway for men and women that want to build their businesses. So I get to build that.
Dude. Hell yeah.
Thank you.
That's huge, man. That's huge. And again, genuinely like puts a smile on my face to know that like it honestly like reinstills some type of vigor in me. You know what I mean? Like I'm like now I'm like, let me go back to the drawing board. You know, I had a lot of thoughts and ideas too. And even though life hits for everyone. That's still not an excuse. That's been my excuse, but it's not an excuse. You know, technically you should still be able to handle business because there's plenty of time. You know, there's plenty of time outside of a normal 9 to 5. You know, it's just like in there, you just have to use it wisely. Like you said, I used to tell people, I took the time the same way you mentioned it to think like I'm the Count of Monte Cristo. Why not better myself? Why not read everything? I'm in this time capsule. Why not?
Yeah.
You know?
Or also use your 9 to 5 to learn more, like how
Yeah.
you did. Like you're using your 9 to 5 to find, and then you found out about the
man,
janitor
that's
stuff,
big.
and then you started putting that together. Like try to grow yourself even more
Yeah.
and more. So can you talk to us when you started writing your book?
Yeah, I started writing it January of 2019. I was I did a talk. I did a talk in Colorado, and then that's when I was approached after the talk by 4 times New York Times bestselling author Tucker Max. He wrote like I hope they serve beer in hell and stuff like that. That whole genre. So he's like, hey, do you see the impact that you just had on the 150 people in this audience? What if I told you I could help you scale that out 10,000 times, 100,000 times? Do you want to make that type of impact in the world? I'm like, yeah, like how? He's like, write a book. Which is, you know, I always loved writing, so that also spoke to me. And then he goes, come to our process. Let me go through our process, and we'll get a book out of you. So I remember that I agreed at the time. He was sending me stuff to read, and to leading up, like, okay, who's your target audience? What are you gonna do? And da 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 da. He put in all of that, and I think about a month up until flying out to Austin to begin writing, I messaged him on Facebook. I was like, hey, I read everything that you sent. I don't think I have a book in me. I don't think I could do it. I don't know who I would write it for. I don't know who I could help. And he's like, Quan, shut the fuck up and just bring your ass out here to Austin. Your story's told. So then we went out there, and he's like, we were sitting there, like it was all these authors, like, aspiring authors sitting around the table, and they made us introduce ourselves. You had to sit in. So I was sitting at the very last seat here. So it started with the person across from me. They started introducing long ass table, like who your name, who your book is for, what problem you're solving, what pain you're solving for the audience, and all this stuff, right? So they start going around like, oh, I'm the chief marketing officer, or so and so. My book is for other chief marketing officers that want to scale their company from 8 figures to 9 figures, and then it start going down. I was like, what the hell is this?
Shit, like, what am I
way
doing
off
here?
your-
Yes,
Yeah, like-
yes. Like, what am I doing? I don't think I belong here. But I think that's always a part of me that I'm always gonna feel like I don't have a seat
Oh,
at the
man,
table,
yes.
and
Nice.
and it was just like this internal dialogue that I'm always telling myself. So they're getting down. I remember it came back to me, and I was like, my name's Quan Huyn. I'm an author. I don't know who my book is for. I don't know what it's about, but I'm willing to learn. And that's where the process began. So it was like we went. They laid out the outline, my commitments of the time I'm gonna write, like even as specific as who my avatar is, what pain am I solving for them. So my book's written for men that are doing long or lifetime sentences, and in it I'm sharing with them how can I come to my own sense of freedom. How did I come to my own sense of freedom years before I paroled? I start off each chapter with the actual excerpts from my parole transcripts, so you'll see what it looks like at a parole hearing, and that's how I re-ground people. This is the parole process. This is the parole process. So that's how I wrote that.
So you're still teaching people through the book too, for like how they could overcome and pass those, go through parole and all that.
Well, because basically every time I go back in, I could talk to a man within 5-10 minutes. They find out I'm a lifer, and they always come up. Oh, you did. This is what happened.
Right.
So I'm listening, and I was like, damn, I could help this dude, but I can't because I am not on this yard, and I want to help him. Like every time I go back in, like do Defy stuff like that, I knew I could help, but I couldn't. So this is a lot of the motivation. Like, what can I share to help? And then I think the other thing is I realized in facilitating a lot of groups in there, I felt men learn from me best when I shared my own mistakes, my own challenges. So that's the way I wrote the book. It's sharing of my own challenges, my own difficulties. Not like you need to do this, but it's more like I remember when I used to think like this, and this is where I was wrong, and this is what I've learned since then. And using the parole hearing process as a framework to help drive the story.
That's fantastic.
That's huge.
man.
That's
That is so
amazing.
fantastic.
I definitely have to take a read. You know, it's been a while. I have to.
Or take a listen. It's on Audible.
Is it?
So.
You know, that's one thing. I'll pick up a book. The most recent one that I read was Anne Rice. I've always been, even since in there.
Interview with the
whatever.
Vampires.
Interview, the whole series. Of
And the Mayfair
Botanicals,
Witches.
the
Yeah, I love that. I read them all.
Mayfair Witches. Haven't gotten into Audible. That one's tough for me. You know, the Audible. I feel like it's more for Audibles for music, not for listening to a book. I think that, but I love it. I know nowadays though, everyone I talk to, they're not used to a physical book, so Audible is the way to go. Right?
Well, you listen to podcasts, right?
It's just funny because these Audible is like you're used to music, but it's like I see my generation is
Audible,
like
right?
Audible is like it's
See?
pure books. I didn't even know there was a music component to it. To be honest, so
I mean, if you listen to podcasts, people are listening to podcasts. There's an
Yeah,
Audible,
you're right.
right? I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
so they're
that
listening to it.
approach, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I listen to books or I listen to podcasts when I'm driving. Stuck in LA traffic,
That's me, yeah.
I'll listen.
Okay.
Are you looking into doing like any other books or anything like that right now, or you still, like do you have the ultimate?
I was told by many people already to begin book 2, but I don't know. I mean, like, I have to figure out what's the problem I'm solving for and who that
right.
audience is.
Well, we appreciate you, Quan, man. This is one of the most like well mentoring podcasts we've ever had, and I loved it so much, man. Like, cause not only that, but you're doing your thing, you're doing big, and more importantly, you're giving back. It's not this idea where you became an entrepreneur and you just went on your own. No, you're trying to give back and help those that are that are reformed as well.
Yeah.
And you still do it through the work you're doing. If you guys haven't heard of Defy Ventures, man, check it out. They're doing great. Where can they go to get access to Defy Ventures? If
Yeah,
they
they could go right onto our website. I mean, if your listeners want to come into prison with me to see us or stuff firsthand, it's like we run a 7-month program. Like I said, career readiness, personal development, entrepreneurship training. They could pitch every person going through a program has to pitch their business. It's going to be judged Shark Tank style by volunteers from the business community. So those are high energy events. You get to see
high-end business community leaders, right?
It's-
I've seen
yeah,
some
I mean,
crazy names on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon, and I tell people all the time, it's not uncommon to have inside our events the net worth of those people to be several hundred million, several billion. I'm not kidding. So and it's just. But I think the more important part is amazing entrepreneurs and philanthropists with a lot of money and access to money that want to drive impact, that want to make a difference in the world.
And the way to make an impact is we're in a capitalistic society. It's through money, right?
Yeah, through building.
You can
building
definitely
it.
make something
Yeah.
happen, man. You know, we appreciate you, Quan, for taking the time, and we know you're busy. We seen you firsthand. You were going at it in the room. You know, we know you're working. But if there's anything last minute that you want to part ways with the camera or whatever, or the audience, but other than that, we appreciate you for a great interview.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, yeah, the audience, if they want to get involved with our work at Defy, go to defyventures.org. If they want to find out more about my journey, they could follow me on all the social media. It's at Quan X Huyn. So just put an X between my name, and it's all social media there. So.
And then,
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, then
for
after,
sure.
we can definitely put that in the description and all that. That way people know.
Well, y'all make sure y'all check out the book, check out Defy Ventures, check out Quan's stories, TED Talk especially. Your TED Talk was fantastic. Great job on that part.
Thank you.
But other than that, make sure y'all like, subscribe, comment, keep following, man. We
All that
have
good
great
stuff,
stories coming through, man. Thank you guys so much for Reentry Network Podcast.
Let's
We're out.
get it, baby.